Hi folks, Dr. Brett here, and I had a question this morning specifically about checking a child for like scoliosis, and they asked about like, well, what do school physicals do, and does it work, and what are they looking for on there, because they wanted to kind of check. It's actually their grandchild, but I get this question all the time. People are like, how do I find out if my kid's got a curve of their spine type of thing? And honestly, most kids don't just stand up and they lean to one side. Your person's body adapts over a course of time to the curve that they have in there to kind of balance themselves out. And if you look close enough, you'll see certain things that happen on there. And that's kind of want to give you an idea of like, what could you look for to kind of pinpoint if your child maybe has some spinal curvature, the beginnings of stuff. Because the trick with this is the earlier you find it, the more you can do with it, and the less likely it is for severe or more permanent implications down the road with it. So first and foremost, like I always say with a kid, like, if you look at them from back or from front and you see a lot of like shoulder dip with them, or they're sliding from one side to the other, or they got a lot of head tilt, things like that that are just fairly noticeable on there, like that's a sign that there's something from that internal like main core structure that's not doing what it's supposed to do on there. So looking at that piece. Another thing to look at is lay them face down on a table and look from their feet back up to them. So their head's there, their feet are here, and I'm looking back up. I'm looking for that. Is the ribs on one side sit higher than the other on there? Like the rib cage will start to rotate. As that spine curves, the ribs will start to rotate higher on one side versus the other side. So you'll see one peak up here a little bit more than the other. You'll also start to see a shoulder blade or your scapula start to flare out one side worse than the other. And you can even see this. The kid takes their shirt off, look at it from behind. Did the shoulder blades sit flat, or does one of them start to kind of protrude a little bit more than the other? So that's a very simple thing to look at. Another thing to look at is the hip height. When they stand up, do they have one side that sits really high compared to the other? Not even really high. Do they have one that sits higher than the other? If they do, again, you start to look at that, starts to create that curve to that lower part of the spine. It's an easy thing to do. Back in school, they'd have you bend over, touch your toes. They'd put a pencil and make sure you line up just right on there. The problem with doing that is sometimes when you flex forward, it actually pulls the curve out. So you don't see it anymore that's on there. You're better to have weight loaded on them to be able to see if there's an actual curve developing there, or if there's a curve that's already there. So easy things to look at. Some other simple things like wear on pants, like pant legs that you'll see. If you start seeing one side fray all the time, the other side doesn't, it's a pelvic discrepancy that's in there that causes some curve to the spine. Or you see shoe wear. One shoe wears more than the other. It's another thing to look at in regards to that. Or if your child starts complaining of consistent tightness on one side of their spine versus the other, things to look at as well too. My rule of thumb is like, and again, it's simple. So I told the grandmother here today, have your kid come in and get checked. It literally takes 5 minutes for us to look at somebody and say, okay, yep, they got a problem. Nope, it's not that big of a deal, and give you some direction with it. So have a professional look at them. If you have any question whatsoever, take that step with them. So hopefully this was helpful on there. Take a look at your kids. We'll talk to you soon.